Hey everyone, it's Andrew Schiffman.
Harry Turcott here. We both worked at MTV in the music and talent department in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, it was a time where music videos, TRL, The Jersey Shore, and the Osbournes ruled the airwaves.
Yes, Andrew, those are some great years. So tune in every week as we catch up with old MTV coworkers, record label execs, VJs, and artists.
I can't wait, Perry. We'll give you insights into meeting superstars before they were superstars and some juicy secrets from that golden age of MTV.
So grab your headphones and get ready to relive the era of music television and the people who shaped a generation.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Music Lounge. We are taping in the end of 24, but you are listening to this in 2025. So happy New Year. This is our third taping of 2025. Hope everyone's keeping their New Year's resolutions. How you doing, Perry?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Have you kept yours?
I'm trying. Still trying to make the list. Apart from the, spend more time with my family. For me, it's all about career growth. So yes, I'm on the path.
Excellent. Congratulations. Well, I hope everyone had a nice holiday. Today we have a friend of ours who we've known for a very long time, the former head of promotion at both ADA and Concord, and currently the senior vice president of promotion and artist strategy at Shelter Music Group. Welcome, Tyson Haller.
Hey guys, nice to see you both.
Welcome.
Thank
That's
you.
a fancy title. I love the artist strategy.
Yeah, it's an exciting part of the title because that's really, being on the management side, or just I have a passion for, as you know, independent artists and independent labels. Like the artist strategy is so core to that. With that part of the industry, that I love that's a key part of what I'm trying to bring to this role.
Nice. And yeah, we've worked together a long time through different chapters of your career, but always bringing some top talent that you're always super passionate about.
Thank you.
Let's jump right into it. So obviously, we just talked a little bit about, your previous positions in music promotion. So how did you kind of get into music promotion? What led you into that area? And what about music promotion excites you?
So I graduated with a marketing degree, so I wanted to get into marketing. So my first job in the industry was at Elektra, and I interviewed for jobs in promotion and in marketing. And so because I had a degree in marketing, I was like, I'm going to go into marketing. So I took the job as tour marketing, but I also, I came into that space by doing, college promotion / college marketing. So once I was doing that assistant role for about a year or so, a job opened up for college promotion, and so I decided to take it because obviously I had that sort of college background being a college rep. So I took that, and that was promotion at its core, calling college radio stations as well as marketing as well, because you would manage a group of college reps and street marketing and stuff like that. But the core of it was definitely calling college radio stations and getting records played on college radio. And I just really started to really enjoy it. I love talking to radio programmers and just talking about music because obviously I was passionate about music. That's kind of why I got into it. So I really enjoyed that aspect of actually talking to people about music all day, and that was a big part of the job.
And you have someone on the other end of the phone that is hopefully just as passionate as you are.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons you and I connected too, right? Talking about music. And I think that was part of what I really enjoyed about the job is how great is that, right? The job is just talking about music.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. And I also just enjoyed the idea of getting things played on the radio, coming from the day of just listening to the radio in your car and getting excited about hearing a song you like on the radio. I liked being a part of that process and sort of, being the back door part of that process so people could share the other end of me, meeting something played on the radio and them hearing it and me being excited for them to hear it on the radio.
I can relate on the video side. Same.
Yeah.
Same
Same thing. Yeah.
thing, yeah.
And I just realized that I just enjoyed it. It's as simple as
Right.
that.
I think there's, I know a lot of people in radio, and marketing is a big part of your job too. You might not have it in your title, but you're coming up with campaigns, seeing them through activation, and you're being kind of creative. What else can you do aside from, can you play this as many times as you can?
Definitely. And any other head of promotion would hear me say promotions just getting songs on the radio would crucify me. It's definitely more than that. It's putting campaigns together where you're connecting the dots. You're getting the airplay, but you're also supporting maybe a tour and maybe putting promotion together around that and making sure you're branding with the station. So you're putting those marketing aspects on the ground in each of those markets that you are getting airplay on, doing promotions around the retailers there, stuff like that. That's definitely a big part of what makes a radio promotion campaign successful. But to be honest, what I enjoy the most is the actual getting that song played on the radio. That's what excites me.
How did working video promotion come into it?
So working at
Taking
88 and before that, what was essentially the independent label group, ILG, also within Warner, there wasn't a video promotion person. So that kind of fell into me. That in addition to obviously the airplay, trying to, if there was a video attached to that, trying to find an avenue of exposure for that video. So I sort of took that under my wing to start those relationships within MTV and the other video outlets to try to promote those videos. So it just kind of became a very non-planned but organic opportunity.
the early part of your career, when you were focused on MTV as well, a lot of your acts were maybe not the traditional MTV fit, but you still had to come and trying to get airplay. And, we had MTV2, we had MTVU, we had MTV Online. So how did you work with our team at MTV for the support that you needed to be successful?
So I never really, because I was during that time, I was working in the independent space for sure. I never had, mostly never had anything proper for MTV proper. But one of the things that the MTV properties had at that time that was great were all those sort of new artist campaigns. I can't remember the names of them offhand, but MTV had this like new artist campaign, and they would really get
I had a
behind it.
freshman five.
Yeah, Freshman Five was one of
Yeah.
them.
We had Discover and Download. We had
That was
Buzzworthy.
D&D, yeah, D&D was the big one. So
Yep.
it would be me working with my artists to go for those opportunities that would really showcase a new artist within the video format. And as I know you guys know, one of the great things about those features were, it was either like a month or something like that, but it was heavy. It was heavy promotion, and yes, the video would get played, which was important. But back to the marketing aspect, there was just a ton of marketing around it and profile building and imaging and all that. And that was what we really went to go for.
Right.
Well, we also created a lot of ancillary content to go for that too.
Yeah.
We'd bring the artist in for an interview, for a performance, for photos, for anything else that we could think to do with them. And then on top of it, in addition to the video being played, there was a half-hour Discover and Download show that premiered every month with those new artists. And then you also had the credit squeezes that were running
Right.
across all the programming
Big.
that
Yep.
that highlighted those artists too, which, I mean, to some extent might have even been a little bit more valuable real estate than video hours were.
Totally. I would agree, because it was probably all throughout the day as opposed to the videos were probably not played at the same time of day parts.
And you had higher viewership during those
Yeah.
times versus the video hours as well.
Yep. Exactly. So I think that was really the opportunities I tried to go for with the kind of artists that I had at the time.
And you felt back at the label that it was really influential in the artist's career to get that spot on MTV.
Yeah, 100%. Like,
Yeah.
we're talking like, I don't know, 2009 through 2000 and I don't know, 14 or 13 or something like that when I was doing that. And it was MTV wasn't playing the same amount of videos they were playing in 1985, but
Right.
they were playing videos, and even more so than playing videos, they were doing these campaigns. Even maybe as they were playing less videos, and so it was still, around some of the reality shows, you were getting these credit squeezes, and sometimes at the end, as I remember, at the end of the Real World, there would be a credit squeeze for one of these
Yep.
features. That was a big
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any wins that come to mind from artists that you got these campaigns? Because you were up against major label, like mainstream pop and hip hop acts too.
I remember doing some pretty great MTVU campaigns with, I think, Atmosphere.
Oh yeah,
He may have played one of your guys' showcases at South by Southwest, I think, or one of those
we were a
stages.
big supporter of Atmosphere, big time.
Yeah, that was a big one. And another one of his label mates, I think, Brother Ali was maybe what his other
Okay.
artist was called. I think we did something
Yeah.
with you guys with. Those are probably my big gets in those new artist campaigns. And while I was less,
When Life Gives You Lemons, right? Was that
that
an
album was
Atmosphere
amazing.
album?
That
Yeah.
album was great. Um, and while this doesn't sort of fit in the traditional sense of what we're talking about me working on video promotion, uh, one of my MTV highlights, although I was more a part of the radio promotion aspect of it, but nonetheless, it was a big memory for me, MTV proper wise, was Macklemore. Going to the VMAs when he was performing on the VMAs that year. I was not a part of the video campaign, but I was a part of building that radio campaign. So it was great to be at the beginning of the seed of that campaign that turned in such a worldwide phenomenon that included an MTV Video Awards performance.
Well, part of the research on our side as video programmers was looking at the media based charts. So you having a hand in that really influenced us on making decisions. I'm sure there was a lot more involved on the back end behind the scenes, but those plays were probably up there on
Yeah, it was
the
definitely
radio side.
a big radio record, and I was only a part of the alternative side, which really
Mhm.
started it, and then it broke out from alternative and went crossed over the pop and rhythm and all those other formats. Um, but nonetheless, it was the only time that I actually had an artist that I was working with that was on the VMAs, so that was definitely exciting.
And at 88, you had some labels that had like pop punk artists. I, as- I'm probably not describing them correctly, but that I know that MTV2 really embraced. I know that MTV.com really embraced. Um, it was a time, I think, when all of those artists could get some kind of feature within the whole sort of MTV universe. Were there any artists in that genre that you remember working with that MTV or MTV.com did a lot of stuff with?
So two and one, Andrew, you brought this up. Middle Class Route was a great one, at least on that sort of like MTVU scale, which was really fun to work with. A great band that came out of Sacramento that we broke at radio and went top 5 alternative, and we did a lot of stuff with MTVU on that. The other one, which I didn't think of until now, which you may not have known, I was a part of at the beginning, was Plain White Tees, Hey There Delilah. Um, that
Monster.
was that was on Fearless Records to begin with. And I was a part of that team that took that video to MTV early on, and started to build it at radio. And I remember I think I was the person who got like the MTV U and maybe MTV2 ad. And then things started to take off so quickly that I remember it was happening, end of spring, beginning of summer, when that momentum started to happen on that song. And then I left to go on a summer vacation. I remember being on the beach and seeing, Hollywood signs, Plain White Tees. I'm like, son of a bitch. I come back and I don't have the band anymore. And granted, that record was a massive hit outside of that. But I was a part of that, particularly on the video side at the beginning.
I mean, that song blew up at TRL too. I mean, it was a huge hit for the band at TRL. During that period of time, that was like the epitome of getting a video anywhere, was getting it seen on TRL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the number one get. And I think when when Taylor Delight was out, there was probably one of the peak times of that profile.
Yeah.
Yep. Fast forward to today, digital is where most people are putting their attention. How has that impacted the traditional formats like TV and radio? And how has your role changed to adapt to the listening habits of the fans? And where do you put your focus to support and break new artists?
Yeah, I mean, it's a new world now compared to those stories. I mean, obviously, and part of my role in so the artist strategy component of being on the management side is trying to make sure that the campaigns involve the digital aspect on socials or digital marketing, or you're supporting with a presence, you know, with a video on YouTube or what have you on that. I still think, and I think this may be, I may be biased, and I'm sure people will argue with me on this. I still think, the biggest profile you can get is still on radio. And I think that it's definitely less than when it was in the 80s and 90s for sure. That piece of the pie is less. It's still the biggest one. And I think that when you connect that with all the other things, that's really when you make the biggest impact. And even more so, particularly in my world. And I will say that the management group that I work with does our wheelhouse is a little bit more rock and alternative. So I'm not necessarily talking about pop and hip hop artists. When you have the radio airplay supporting a tour, that's really the biggest impact. And I will wholeheartedly say that is true. If you have those two components solo, or you just have online social TikTok on its own, unless you go viral, right, which is not a given and is also more of a rarity.
Yep.
If you just have that, and compared to having some radio airplay and a tour, you're much more likely to succeed with the radio airplay and the tour, because that's really how you're getting in front of fans. And I truly believe that that's still the biggest impact you can have.
So when you say that radio is sort of the biggest piece of the pie, I mean, we hear that all the time, or we hear that often. What is that percentage?
But I have a pretty good idea of what that number is after watching each year of different articles and research that comes out. So I would, say back in the 90s, early 2000s, it was probably, 85%
Right.
of that was the biggest profile an artist could get was through radio, and radio impacted the audience in that form. Now with the fractured market, I think it's more like 36%, which is obviously a big drop from 85% or
Right.
80%.
Right.
But back to the point of, as we all know, media is fractured. So, streaming, I think, is around 26%.
Hmm.
And then radio still has about 36%. So much large, not much larger than streaming. Definitely not as big as it used to be, but still the biggest piece of the pie as far as impacting a big audience.
And you still feel that iHeart and Sirius having their own apps, and they're driving a lot of their listeners to download the apps.
So
does that
that's one of the reasons.
help you, or is
Yeah,
that
I'm not saying
kind of against?
that's all of it, but that is
Right.
definitely one of the reasons they still have the biggest piece of the pies,
Mhm.
because listeners have learned to listen in everyone's always listening in the car, but they've learned to transition to also listen on their computer at home when they get to the office or whatever. Not
Mhm.
that I'm saying everybody does that. I'm just saying that's why the piece is still a little bit bigger. You have people in the car, which is obviously the main piece of music you're listening to is the car. Not that
Yeah.
everyone does, but that's probably 85% people in the car listen to radio. But people have learned to, or just grown accustomed to also, a fraction of those people will still listen to the radio on their computer at work. And I think
It,
that's why they
it,
continue to be the biggest piece, because there's that extra little piece that includes listening on the app or on their computer.
yeah. And then what about companies like Spotify, which are competing against radio? But I listen to a lot of artists and I go to their station. So you seem to get competitors taking advantage of radio habits and the way that we listen to radio. And now you have radio formats within Spotify. So they're almost moving away from the on demand, which was the big pull from when Spotify launched. It was listen to whatever you want. Now they have more of that sit back and listen format. You know, I was listening to Spotify yesterday. The DJ function came up, so I have a DJ talking to me and playing me songs based on my history and recommendations. So it's very personalized to me, but it's set in this radio format now with a VJ.
Which I think shows why radio always works.
Absolutely.
They sort of like realize people. I'm not going to say that they realize that's the only way to work, but they realize there are people that just works. It just works. People don't want, when the iPad came, we all thought like radio's going to go away because you could play the iPod in your car, and it didn't, because people still enjoy sitting back and letting sort of hearing a mix of music be procured to them, as opposed to always having to pick the album on your own, because eventually myself
You have
included,
too much to choose from. Yeah, I almost
Yeah.
go
Doing
brain
it.
dead,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, we've talked to people on the video side who have found that programming periods of music videos is also still working for people, similar to old school MTV, where you would just sit back and whatever video played was what you saw at the moment. Yeah, so it's working across both audio and video.
I mean,
yeah,
I would definitely enjoy that.
yeah. I always go back to traditional TV, and listening habits are almost going back to what they were, where the big thing about Netflix was you just dump a whole season and you can just binge watch 6, 12 episodes in one go. But now a lot of these platforms are releasing weekly, so you're
Right.
almost
So you
going
have to
back
wait
to
for the chance to- Yeah.
traditional viewing and listening habits.
Had the local presence of the DJ personalities. I think that makes it even more impactful, which I think is unique to that platform.
Yeah, I think fans still want to relate to someone and trust a source that's feeding them the information, the new music. They're much likely to take on discoverability from a human, I think, versus AI at the moment.
Any artists this year that you've seen a benefit from the more traditional music formats?
There's a new artist that I worked with at the tail end of last year, beginning of this year, called Austin Mead. He sort of comes from the Jelly Roll camp. They're sort of red dirt, alt country, rock country, come out of Texas. Before we started working with him, he had a circuit within Texas that he had a presence with and selling tickets, and then we sort of picked him up and we worked with the label, put an album out, and I put a radio campaign together, and we put on a tour to support that. And while I'm not going to say that he's got a platinum record yet, I think the campaign that included kind of what I mentioned before of a radio campaign supported by a tour has put him on a new playing field that he would not have been had that presence not really been developed. Because you had obviously getting radio stations to play him, so you're hearing the new song, they're talking about the new album, but then he also had a tour in all those markets too. So not only did people have a chance to actually see him live, and hopefully they connected with that live show, but you would have those promos on the radio station, and of course digitally as well, supporting that show, that connected all of it together, saying, here, you've heard this song on the radio, or you've seen the video, or you saw on Instagram or something like that, here, come see him live. So you had a couple of hits around all of it happening in a market, and I think now he's on a different playing field than he was sans that relationship.
Well, if you get any of the attention or a partial bit of the attention that Jelly Roll has gotten the last couple of years, you're on a good trajectory with that artist.
Not a bad camp to be with.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And by the way, I think that format, that genre, if you will, has so much more potential yet to come. I think it's granted Jelly Roll is one of the biggest artists in the world, and definitely here in the US right now. but it's definitely a sound in a scene. There are a lot of people in that scene that aren't as big as him that are starting to break. I don't think it's just a fad necessarily. I think it's a real scene there. So I think there's more to come on that from those types of artists.
So we're going to take a break in our questioning and throw you some trivia. So you should be able to answer these. It's a fun break in our show. All right, here we go. MTV VMA's Best Rock Video category has been won by one female only throughout its entirety. Was it Evanescence, Lorde, Paramore, or Florence and the Machine? And I say female or female.
What year?
Lead. No, just which artist. And only one female has ever won this category.
I'm going to say Florence.
Incorrect. It was Lorde with Royals in 2014. The only female that's won this rock category.
I would debate whether that's a rock track.
Well, I would debate whether a lot of the nominees in that category were traditionally rock. If you watch this past VMAs this year, well, last year, 2024, who won the best rock video? And I can give you a list. Nominees include Bon Jovi, Coldplay, Lenny Kravitz, Kings of Leon, and U2.
Last year?
2024. Wasn't too long ago.
No, it wasn't.
Well,
you're in rock.
The thing is, all of those nominees could have been for the last 25 years.
They're all comebacks. Yeah.
Coldplay.
Lenny Kravitz.
That was my next guess.
Yeah. You worked with the band Bad Flowers, right?
Bad Flower, yep.
And they just hit number 1 on Active Rock.
And top 10 at Alternative this week.
Okay, congratulations. When we are recording this the week of December 16th, without looking at Mediabase, they're sitting at number 3. Which 2 bands are above you in this format?
That's rock. The ones above it are
I know promo people have this stuff on lockdown.
I definitely know this. It's just gonna have to take me a second. Because I'm focused more on Scott Stapp, who's at 9 right now.
Okay. I know when an artist peaks and it drops down, you kind of move on.
Breaking Benjamin's at 1, I think.
Correct. Yep.
And number 2 is on the way up. Because Bad Flower just was at number 1.
Ding ding.
Linkin
Park, correct.
Thank you.
All right. If you grew up or if you watched Headbangers Ball in the late 80s, early 90s, who was the first host of Headbangers Ball?
Oh, geez. Not so much my genre.
Gotcha.
Wasn't Matt Pinfield?
No, Matt we had for 120 minutes.
He was on 120 minutes. Can you give me a hint?
First name, Ricky.
Springfield?
Ricky Rackman.
I would never got that.
Okay.
You should have given me the 120 minutes question.
I thought that would have been too easy, but maybe I should have made them easy. All right. A little bit of trivia for you. Going back to MTV and the triumphs that you had, I remember you brought in Middle Class Rut to the Music Lounge. He was feeling a little poorly that day, maybe from the night before or just a genuine cold. His voice was pretty shot. So any other stories of artists that you brought in to present to us? And, you know, when you brought in Middle Class Rut, I was a massive advocate for them. And knowing he was a little sick, do you remember hesitating bringing them in, or you were just like, fuck it, it's scheduled, let's just
No, I,
do it?
I think I was really passionate about that band. They were great to work with. I think that one was they were like, we're going to do it. I was like, if you don't
I think
feel
they
up
pulled it
for it,
off too, actually.
just let them know. And he was like, no, man, I'm going to do it. Like I'm
Right.
here. So that was their decision to do that. So I respected them for that, and I knew it wasn't going to be their best performance, but I also knew that they would get some credibility for like pulling up their big pants and going in there and doing it and fulfilling a commitment that they made too. One of the here's when you said that, the first thing that comes to mind that I think is a good story that actually isn't an artist. It was me presenting a video to you guys. And I think it may have been Brother Ali, or Atmosphere, one of the two. And I don't know if you're in the meeting, either of you guys, but but I know you guys, people come in and present videos, right? In the conference, a small conference room, a little video room, right?
That's the music lounge.
Music room. Okay. Yeah. So, I remember what I did was I recorded myself on a DVD talking to myself in real time.
Oh,
So
smart.
I would record the DVD like answering the question, and then me in real
Right.
would ask the question, and the video me would answer the question.
Very creative. Yeah.
So that's how I presented that video. Is I put in a DVD and I interviewed myself talking about the artist um, in front of everyone, which I thought was really fun and took everyone obviously by surprise.
And you use DVDs, which
And DVDs
who
were
uses the yeah? That's
mo-
so old school.
yeah,
I remember you used to come in with a lot of gifts. You actually presented me with a Tom Morello signed guitar.
right. That was a big one. Yeah,
You gave me a still from Cake, Too Long.
yeah. I think that may have been the song. Yeah,
It was a signed still.
that project was Street Sweeper Social Club. That was
That yeah. Who was it with? It was a collab, right?
yeah. There was a rapper in that band.
Yeah.
But that was a fun project. After a show at Gramercy, we all went out for drinks and doing shots with Tom Morello. It's not a bad.
So when you were at ADA, what were some of the labels that you were working with there?
Yeah, when I was at ADA, I mean, at that time, ADA, in my opinion, I'm a little more of an indie rock type of guy, had the best labels in the industry. Domino, obviously, we had Arctic Monkeys, Beggars, Beggars Banquet was there, which included 4AD. We had a Secretly Canadian, Mute, just a whole bevy of amazing. Partisan was a part of that. I mean, any cool indie label I think was going through ADA, which is what made ADA so great at that time, and so great to work with. And I think that early, going into the early 2000s, although I didn't work for them until the early 2000s, but I think hands down everyone agreed, even if you're working for the competition, that ADA had the best independent labels.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely.
Any great shows from those artists that you can recall?
So I think one of the questions was like the favorite venue and favorite
Yeah.
artist.
Before we get to that, Street Sweeper Social Club, Boots Riley.
Boots. I knew it was BDB Boots Riley. That was
Yeah.
a great guy. And super fun. So my favorite venue in the city, which I'm sure I'm not alone in saying, is Bowery Ballroom. I think everything that comes to Bowery Ballroom, you're like, oh, must be credible. If you haven't heard of it, you're like, oh, must be cool.
Right.
Like they just book cool shows, and a lot of them are also artists sort of like on the rise that are getting bigger, and they're just known for playing having cool bands. So I'm always looking forward to a show at Bowery Ballroom. And my most memorable show at Bowery Ballroom, although it wasn't a band I worked with, I went to see, and I know, Andrew, you're familiar with this, the band opening up for them was a band called The Killers, and they weren't signed yet. And I
Wow.
never heard of who The Killers were, but they had a keyboard. I'm a big sort of like synth Britpop guy, and they had this the keyboard on there, and they were awesome. Like, oh, this is really, really great. Like, really into it. they're not signed yet. So they had like a 7-inch there that I got, and then I went, I was like, oh, that was a great opening band, and then I went, enjoyed the still set, and then obviously the Killers are
Do
amazing.
you remember any hit songs that you heard back then that are? I mean, they probably
I don't
played
remember the
Mr. Brightside, maybe
I'm
back
sure they
then.
played all those. They would have had to. Yeah,
Yeah.
they would have played all those.
That's amazing. And that was at Bowery.
Sorry,
That was at Bowery.
that was at Bowery. Yeah, so before they put out Hot Fuss.
Yeah. Well, I went to the night before they played Govball this past summer. They played a pop-up show at Bowery, which was a 20th anniversary of Hot Fuss. So I was there for that.
So the funny thing about so I do love the Killers. They represent everything I love about rock and alternative music. So I saw them before they were signed, and I never saw them again until last year.
Okay.
When they played Madison Square Garden. And I was definitely looking forward to it, obviously. But I had no idea how amazing their show was. It was a real party. Like there was confetti and there was like, fire, and there was just like it was a real
They
like
really bring that Vegas feel.
Totally. It was
which
amazing.
is where they're from, yeah.
And on top of that, they played almost every song off of Hot Fuss, which was also awesome because not only is that a great album, but sometimes, bands of that stature, particularly if you're selling at Madison Square Garden, don't like to play the hits, or at least not like their first album. So the fact that they played like probably 75% of that first album that night, I thought was really impressive because that's really kind of what we want to hear.
Yeah.
The fact that they actually gave it to us was kind of cool.
Yeah. I think I saw them about 6 times last year.
Am I right?
Toured a lot.
So they play the hits.
Yeah. But they have a long show too. But they're Brandon's such a showman.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Any other venues, like smaller venues? I like going to see bands at Mercury Lounge. Last time I saw you might have been passing. You were leaving, I was going in. Those venues where you're just so close. Very intimate.
I do like Mercury Lounge. I like Irving Plaza. I mean, I definitely hung out a lot at CBGB's back in the day. I had a couple. I think I was at Electra and we were showcasing the band Stained, and we played that showcase. I think was at CBGB's.
Oh wow!
Or Brownies, one of those two, which is kind of similar, kind of a vibe. So a lot of good nights, I think, at those types of venues. It was Brownies, but Brownies was great too. Another one like small, like Mercury Lounge, but like you just knew like a Brownie show was going to be a cool show.
I think that was before my time in New York.
Well, you missed out.
I went to Brownies.
Brownies was great.
Nice. Well, very cool, man. We got to learn a little bit about Tyson, and we got to trip him up on some trivia, which was fun.
Thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Really enjoyed it.
And Happy New Year. Hope your January's going well.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
All right.
Thanks,
Talk
Tyson.
soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today in the Music Lounge.
And tune in next week to hear more stories about your favorite era of MTV.